Now that you know the basics about filming video, you're ready to learn how to apply these techniques to filming for news. There are three main types of video stories that a newsroom produces: a VO, short for a voiceover, a VOSOT, short for a voiceover with sound on tape, and a package. Let's take a look at each of these in more detail. VOs, or voiceovers, are relatively simple. They're roughly 30 seconds in length. They consist of a news anchor or reporter reading the story over clips of B-roll from the scene. But what is B-roll? B-roll is supplementary footage that provides contextual information about your story. The footage is typically played over a narration by the reporter, which is in turn broken up by clips from interviews. B-roll gives the viewer something to look at other than talking heads, and allows them to gain more insight into the details on your story through visual clues. So what sort of B-roll should you be filming? To begin with, you should film some shots of the locations where the event you're reporting on took place in order to orient the viewer. This type of shot is called an establishing shot. It is generally a long shot or an extreme long shot of an important landmark or view of the scene. The long shot can be supplemented by close-ups of the scene, which give a better view of important details or noticeable features. Be sure to add some sort of lower third that tells the viewer what the location is. You'll also want to shoot important subjects that relate to your story. Subjects can be people, animals, buildings, pretty much anything you can think of that relates to your story. They will vary depending on what your story is about. For example, if you're shooting a story about traffic, you might want to get some shots of parked cars, cars driving, or cars stopping at an intersection. If you were doing a story on the coming of spring, you might want to get some shots of blooming trees or people relaxing outdoors. The shots depend on the story that you're planning on telling. Ideally, they should serve as a visual companion to the narration, while still providing some sort of new information or insight. VOSOTs, or voiceover sound on tape, are the next step up from VOs. They are 40 to 45 seconds long and are similar to the VOs in that they are primarily comprised of B-roll with a story narrated by an anchor or a reporter. However, VOSOTs also include a 10 to 15 second interview clip somewhere within the story. Interviews are exactly what they sound like: one-on-one conversations. Interviews contribute to the overall story because they provide sound bites from people who have some connection to the event you're covering, which gives your story some validity. Interview sound bites also break up the reporter's narration, preventing it from becoming monotonous.
It was I was chasing after my dog. I was trying to, because she normally chases after cars, and a lot of times I try to get her to stop.
Often, reporters will write stories around key sound bites from these interviews. There are 5 important things that you should keep in mind on how to properly shoot an interview. When framing your interviewee, focus the frame around their head, or their head in the uppermost part of their torso. Keep their head on the side of the frame opposite the direction they're facing. If you're filming multiple interviews for the same package, try to have different interviewees face in different directions to mix up your shots. When filming an interview, you don't want the interviewee to look directly into the camera. Viewers will think he is directly addressing them instead of conducting an interview. Instead, move 30 degrees to the right or the left of the camera, causing the interviewee to look slightly off screen. After you shoot your interview, you can shoot some shots from additional angles to round out your interview footage. One type of shot that you might want to include is a 2-shot of you interviewing the person. This can be useful to lead into the interview. Another type of shot you can do is a shot of the interviewee doing some sort of task in front of the camera. This can be specific to the position that they hold if it's relevant to the story. For example, if you were interviewing a writer, you could possibly get some shots of him working on his latest book. A regular person could be checking the mail or looking through a photo album. Note that you don't need to do this for every interviewee, but it's recommended for ones who are very important to the story. When people are watching your interview, they generally want to know who it is that's talking and why. This is why it's important to put lower thirds over your interview footage to help inform viewers. Lower thirds provide the name and occupation of the interviewee and typically fit into the lower third of the screen. Add these titles in post-production, and remember that you only need to have them up for a few seconds the first time that you introduce the interviewee. VOs and VOSOTs are important in professional news, but the type of story that we'll be focusing on is the package, which is often better suited for individual reporters. A package is a self-contained video news report that usually runs about 1.5 minutes in length. It is generally used for more complicated stories or stories with multiple interviews, as opposed to shorter stories that have some interaction with anchors. Reporters can use the package format to tell a story about events using various types of shots. In addition to B-roll and interviews, packages typically contain a stand-up. A stand-up is a short segment in which the reporter goes on camera to tell a piece of the story. The stand-up can be important for a number of reasons. One is that it's often used in segments to transition viewers from one angle of the story to another. For example, if you're covering a story about a controversial new law, you might initially focus on the details of the law and the lawmaker's perspective, then use a stand-up to refocus on the reaction of people who disagree. A sample stand-up about college students working on a project for Haiti might go something like this.
Over time, it's become a labor of love, and I'm really excited with how it's turned out.
There's no denying this structure is a testament to the students' intelligence, but they say there's nothing better than using their brains and brawn to help others.
It's really become something special, and looking at this project from the beginning, full swing to this, it's really been something else.
Depending on the situation, it can also allow reporters to remove some of the distance of the story from the viewers. Seeing the reporter in the middle of an event can make it seem more real. Finally, a stand-up is useful because it can serve as a signature on your work, especially if you add a lower third to tell viewers who you are. Placing yourself in the report connects you with your work and gives the sense that you're committed to the story. It also allows you to get your face out there and make yourself known as a reporter. Connecting with your viewers is important if you want them to watch your work in the future. In the next video, we'll take a look at some more techniques for reporters that go beyond camera work. We'll show you the basics of how to find, plan, and report on a story.